Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at those people who have their natal moon in conjunction with Chiron. Such individuals are very, very sensitive, to say the least. Chiron is our core wound, and we have to look at the sign that Chiron is in and the house placement to get a good grasp on what that wounding is all about. A conjunction will tend to be when a planet or point is in the same sign as another planet or point, close in degrees, within about a 10-degree orb, they allow, I think in many cases, or, distance apart in degrees. But it's not always the case that they're in the same sign. So you want to look at what sign is your Chiron. And so what is that wound? What house is it in? And that will give a greater depth to what is involved in this. And of course, the moon sign will tend to be the same as Chiron. And what does that represent? The moon represents our emotional nature, the mothering that we had, the type of mother that she was, our need for security and our other needs, and just our feelings at a deep level. And so when you have this type of conjunction, like thinking about a mother figure, it may be that you saw your mother suffering, because Chiron can really be about suffering since it's the core wound. And you probably have heard the phrase for Chiron described as the wounded healer. And this is because that is the archetype of Chiron. And that means what wounded healer means is that your wound can serve as healing for others. So in this case, it could be a mother wound, okay? And you could help other people with their mother wounds. For instance, if you are a psychologist or other type of therapist, and or a bereavement counselor if you lost your mother at a young age, and you're dealing with people who are, maybe like a child counselor or something like that. Now, in terms of other things that this can suggest, it can be that you are this open wound as far as your emotions go. Like you're walking around and it's so easy for you to be hurt, okay? Now, let's say that this conjunction is in Aquarius. You may have read so much about astrology and you keep reading about how detached or even out of touch Moon in Aquarius is with their own feelings, and they're over intellectualizing their feelings and over analyzing their feelings to death. Well, this might confuse you because you might think that you have the moon in Pisces. You're like, it's not even close to the cusp of Pisces, and I still feel like I am, because there is a Piscean kind of a vibe when we're talking about Chiron. I remember I was trying to look it up, but I didn't really, make much of an effort, because I believe I read somewhere that Chiron does have a quality that is similar to Pisces in terms of suffering, because Pisces rules the 12th house of karma, and there can be suffering and victimhood associated with Pisces. So similar themes can crop up on an emotional level with this conjunction. And, your emotional front and center display can, I'm sure it would make you feel emotionally vulnerable, but other people may sense that as well. And I would imagine, based upon how people who feel emotionally vulnerable tend to act, that there could be, in some cases, a bit of well, it is oversensitivity, but I mean how you react in the world with that may depend on the sign. For some people, it might just be like you accept it as your fate, but for other people, it might be this sense of like a prickly nature in this, in a way where you are attempting to kind of be self-protective, but it might come across as defensiveness because when somebody wears their heart on their sleeve, that's going to increase their moodiness, and sometimes that will manifest as being snappish or things like that. And really, that person is feeling maybe even unsafe emotionally because of their vulnerability. But it's also going to make you quite empathic, and you're going to be able to understand other people's pain very readily. And this is not an easy thing to have to deal with, because it just adds to the emotional baggage, if you will. And especially if your conjunction is in water, that's going to, because the moon in water is super charged with emotion and very impressionable. In other words, absorbing the energies around them, especially Pisces. But even Cancer could certainly do that. I'm leaving Scorpio out of it because Scorpio's a bit fierce, but it's a water sign, so we can't leave that out either. But that just enhances all of that, and the psychic tendencies, which, really all of this thing, being empathic, is really a lot about stuff like that. Again, you can help other people heal and transform their lives, and that is a great gift to give, one of the best I can think of. And the other thing too is an understanding, an emotional understanding, first with yourself, and then with others, where you can teach them, how to learn about their emotions. I have the square myself, I mean the opposition. Anytime that you make contact with two planets or points, you're going to have similar themes develop. Some of them will be more challenging than others. The squares and the oppositions are the challenging aspects, but sometimes conjunctions can also be challenging. And I think in this case, that is certainly the case because of the two, the points planets that are coming together when you're talking about the moon and you're talking about Chiron. So when we look at some of the ways to work with this conjunction, one of them is obviously to not want to numb or escape, because there is going to be a very profound emotional nature that can feel overwhelming sometimes, especially in certain signs like Pisces, for instance. And the person may not think they have the ability. And also, I said in Pisces, but also what house is it in? If it's in, for instance, the 12th house or the 8th house, there could be, or or the fourth house. These are the water houses. It's going to enhance that emotional signature, but then it also creates that sense of it's all too much, which is funny because I realized as soon as I knew I was going to do this video that I was going to put as the title, "It's All Too Much," and that was a song that was recorded by, I think it was recorded by the Beatles, but it was written by George Harrison, who was a Pisces. So, that certainly can be a reaction for somebody who has the moon in conjunction with Chiron. Like, how can I even handle this? So the tendency would be to engage in escapism. And sometimes that can be self-care, because sometimes it's not just about distracting yourself, but really taking yourself out of that heaviness of emotion, if that's what you're feeling, and, maybe something that's lighter or more hopeful, positive, to kind of raise the frequency. But on the other hand, you don't want to run away from this conjunction and your feelings. And so learning how to do self-inquiry to get to the heart of the matter of why you feel the way that you feel can be very helpful. And like I said, you can help other people by becoming self-aware of your own emotional nature and learning how to you could say learning how to deal, like learn to deal, meaning that whatever has happened in your life, whatever you're feeling, that you have radical acceptance of it. Because sometimes people want to push away the reality of their situation. And radical acceptance is, really being okay with whatever has transpired, and almost like vowing that you are going to, be in the thick of things. You're not, rather than the tendency to kind of run away from it, you're going to double down, and you're just going to be very present with the reality of that situation, the reality of your relationship with your mother, whatever it was, whatever it is, whatever it was. And one of the things I wanted to say, because I was kind of alluding to this at the beginning, is that if you had a mother herself who was suffering emotionally in some way, you might identify with her in terms of like being like her, but you may also feel sorry for her. And that can lead to that sense of feeling sorry for everyone. There's a movie from like I think it was the early 30s or something, or mid 30s. And it starred Joan Crawford. And it was called Rain. And it was based on a short story by Somerset Maugham. And at the end of the movie, she says, "I feel sorry for the whole world." And that pretty much sums up your emotional nature. And that's beautiful, because we need compassion in this world. But it has to be tempered with understanding that you can't save people from themselves, because all of these things can, potentially lead to codependency in relationships, trying to make people your projects that you're going to, transform their lives, but you happen to be in a romantic relationship with this person. It's not like you're a therapist who is helping your client. It's like you're, sharing a bank account and sharing a space together, and that person is a raging alcoholic, and you're going to get them sober. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to get them a job. And meanwhile, you get dragged down. You definitely don't want to go that route, trying to prove to the world that you're a compassionate soul. It has to be tempered. So, but you have some beautiful gifts to share, and it's definitely a beautiful conjunction to have, when you approach it with self-awareness, not self-pity, And so anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, resonated with it. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.